to Historia.
I'm Jamie.
I'm Kylie.
Hello.
This is Historia, where we talk about history.
Yes, this week, the next 2 weeks, I believe we
Yeah.
have a consistent theme. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you are into literature, maybe you will.
Yeah, we like to, throw in a theme or two once in a while. Makes things interesting. So, that's what we did.
Yours is going to be very modern, and mine is going to be very ancient, because I love ancient things.
Yeah, we did a very different twist to them, so.
Oh, yeah. Ours are very different.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
Stay tuned for next week.
Yes.
But, it's going to be good. How you doing, Jamie? It's February,
I am doing great. I am feeling great drinking these seltzers right now instead of wine.
Yeah, we have some fruit smash hard seltzers. I've never tried these, but they're good.
Cute. Like, their little cans are so cute. Like, one of them has, like, they're for the pink lemonade. It has, like, the little lemons on it with some raspberries. Dominoes.
They're so cute. And mine is wearing a t-shirt.
Oh, yeah. I gave her one of my koozies, and it's a t-shirt. It's like a Hawaiian t-shirt. It's pretty cool.
I love it. So great. Yeah, man. Life's been crazy. Starting of the year, it's always wild.
Mm-hmm. We had a pretty raunchy snowstorm.
Oh, we did. Yeah, we had like an Arctic snow. I forget what they called it. Yeah, so with the Arctic storm or whatever it was called, I had 2 snow days. It was pretty awesome.
Your job able to.
Yeah, but then it was weird because we went back to school on a Friday.
Yeah.
And then we had the weekend, so it's like the kids were just kind of like, eh. And we were all like, eh.
I'm so close to my job, and I worked from home on Wednesday, but on Thursday, I was like, I'll go in.
Yeah.
They did not plow anywhere in the city.
No, and the sun wasn't out at all, because usually the sun will melt some of it, but
yeah,
freezing.
I was so pissed. I was just like, how do they not salt all of these, like, main roads?
Yeah.
I was so mad. I was like, my car, like, granted, my car can handle it because it's all-wheel drive.
Relax.
It's Pet Central.
Ruby's pooping and Layla's going crazy.
Gross.
Okay, we've kicked the children out.
Jesus Christ. I mean, we could always just post so many just errors that we go through.
Yeah. But yeah, let's see what else happened. Oh, my dog turned 1. She had her first birthday. Her cousins were there to celebrate. I spent a lot of money on a cake.
I'm sorry I couldn't make it. I completely forgot what day it was.
Well, no, because I was gonna invite other people, but then my mom was sick, so we just did we just did at her house quickly. But yeah, her 2 cousins were there. They got to eat some cake. 3 cousins.
I know for Layla's first birthday, I got her I went to one of the local dog stores.
Yeah.
Pet stores, and they had a little cookie with frosting on it.
Yeah.
So I got her one of those, and then I got her some frosted cover with sprinkled dog treats.
Aw, so fun.
She's not really a milk bone dog. She won't eat them full. You have to break them apart for her.
Gotcha.
She's so picky about it. I don't know why, but
it must be broken into pieces.
She's turning 2 soon.
That's so crazy.
Oh, baby.
We might have some more dogs coming soon.
Hey.
Just saying.
I'm hoping it goes through. We're planning to get another dog, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't want to get my hopes up, but I really hope it happens.
Yes, Jamie might be getting another dog. I almost got another dog today, but then I was like, let's be responsible.
I know, it's so hard.
It is.
But it is what it is. James does not want to go through the puppy phase.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm fine with it. I'm like, hopefully, the dog will pick up on, Layla's behavior.
Yeah, he should. He said she. I feel like they always follow the older dog.
Yeah.
And since she's pretty well trained, I think he'll be
that's what I'm hoping. And then.
And you have a backyard for potty training.
Exactly.
That'd be so nice.
And just to help prevent accidents, just pick the dog up, put him where you want him.
Right. Potty pads is what I used.
Yeah. It's just, it was so hard with Layla because we were living in an apartment and we were upstairs.
Yeah.
And when we first got her, she didn't know how to walk or walk downstairs. She didn't know what to do. She kind of just stared at them and looked at us I don't know what these are.
Yeah.
But so we had to like train her to do that.
Right.
And with her also being very timid, it was just like, oh my gosh, she barks at everything. But she has gotten so much better with barking at people walking by.
That's good.
She just ignores them.
Good. She's come so far.
Yeah. But so enough about our lovely pets. What are we discussing?
Yeah, we're gonna get started because I got a lot to say. We are talking about. So I tried to get people on Instagram to guess, but nobody guessed.
Oh.
So, because I used I was like, guess who this episode is about? And then I put a clown emoji, a book emoji, and then like a crown, king. So, but people didn't get it. So, I'm going to be talking about Stephen King today.
Hey!
So, he is one author that I've always been really fascinated by, just because of how dark his stories are. If you don't know anything about him, he writes horror stories, and like some sci-fi. But like the thing about him is just like there's so much mystery, because like he doesn't really like to be in the spotlight. He doesn't really like interviews. So like it was just I've always been fascinated.
Isn't he like a really nice guy?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to talk today. There's a lot to unpack from his childhood, which really does kind of coincide with how the stories he wrote. So it is very interesting because people are always like, how did he like think of this idea?
He looks like a grandpa. Just like a suburban grandpa.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, this is the man who created these stories?
Yeah, it's crazy. You see him and he's just smiling. But like, I kind of relate with him because I've always been a horror fan. And like, always been into that stuff and where people like just don't get why. So anyway, we're going to talk about Stephen King today. Stephen King has wrote 70 novels.
Holy shit.
110 short stories. And he even has over 50 film adaptations to his stories.
What?
Yeah. He has a lot.
He must be fallen.
Oh, yeah. He's known, he's still alive. If I say was, I'm sorry. It's just, I accidentally wrote was a lot in my notes. I don't know why. But he is the king of horror. He's still alive. So, Stephen Edward King was born on September 21st, 1947. Do you remember the 21st night? September. Okay, sorry. I just looked Jamie in the eyes when I start singing. He was born in Portland, Maine.
Really?
And, yeah. Oh, he loves Maine.
I want to go to Maine.
Yeah, me too. Well, so I put his parents were, and then I crossed it out and put are, but technically it is were because they're dead. But
that's the one time you corrected, but it was incorrect.
Right. So his parents were Donald and Nellie Ruth Pillsbury King. His mom's name is Nellie Ruth, but she went by Ruth. So I mentioned her a lot. Ruth King was told that she couldn't have any kids, so she ended up adopting David Victor in 1945. And then she found out she was pregnant about a year later and had Stephen.
Wow. So
she was told, yeah, you're not going to get pregnant. And then she got pregnant. So.
Those doctors.
Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy. 40s are wild. So his dad, Donald, was a merchant marine who was gone a lot. So they moved a lot, or they just wouldn't see him for a long period of time. His dad was a huge fan of horror and science fiction stories, and even unsuccessfully tried to write books, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Stephen didn't know about this until way later on in his life, so this didn't really inspire him, but it is just a similarity that they have to each other.
Yeah, it's kind of like not a so-called genetic, but kind of an interest.
It is, yeah. So Stephen once, and this again was a very long time after this time, but just to give you some background information about Donald, Stephen came across a box of his dad's books, including books by authors like H.P. Lovecraft, so a lot of horror authors.
H.P. Lovecraft was the inventor of Scientology.
I guess he wrote books too.
That's what he did first, and then he created Scientology.
He did both?
Yeah. It's fucking weird.
Oh my god. Wow. Yeah. We're gonna have to unpack him later. And then when World War II ended, Donald returned home permanently. Guess what his new job was?
What?
He sold vacuums door to door.
Shit, they actually did stuff like that.
Yeah. You gotta make your money.
Yeah.
So he would go door to door, sell vacuums. And Stephen actually does not remember his dad because His dad left one day to get a pack of cigarettes and never came back. And Stephen was only 2.
That is, like, the iconic, like...
Yeah, like, hey, we're going buy some milk or whatever.
And then my dad never came back. Like, that's sad, and it actually happened for him, but it's like, you never thought...
Yeah.
Thought it was just...
He was only 2, so he's like, I don't really remember my dad, so, like, finding the books later on is really the only connection he has to him.
Yeah.
But he knew that he was a Marine. So, yeah. His mom's a lot more involved in his life.
So his dad was a flaky Marine.
Yeah, so... Nellie now had to raise her 2 sons. She had 4-year-old David and 2-year-old Stephen. And they were constantly moving to try to find work because they were very, very, very poor. Mm-hmm. They were very low class. So they lived in different places. They tried out Chicago, Fort Wayne, Indiana. They tried out places in Massachusetts and even Wisconsin.
So some of the most expensive places.
Yeah. I'm like, you might want to go a little bit further than that. But yeah, they kind of stayed on that side.
Yeah.
But sometimes she would have to even leave the kids for a while and send them off to, like, her sister's house or their grandparents' house, so she just couldn't even take care of them.
Jeez.
So she could work more. So a lot of their focus was on, like, making money and trying to make ends meet. So she had to work 2 to 3 jobs at a time to feed her family. And babysitters were too expensive, so she would just leave her kids home alone. And I'm talking when they were, like, 4.
Jeez.
Yeah. So she would just tell them, hey, read these books to each other. When I come back, you're going to tell me what the books are about. Just to keep them busy.
I mean, that honestly probably helped them.
Right. They were super smart. Both of them were really smart. So, yeah, so that's what they did. So they would sit home alone, and they would just read to each other to pass the time. So Stephen learned how to read at a very, very young age. In 1958, the Kings finally moved into a permanent house in Durham, Maine. So Ruth's sister, Ethelyn, basically gave them a house as a gift. In return, that Ruth would take care of their dying parents, basically. Oh. So she just had to make sure that she was able to take care of them. They lived with them for a while. So that was the deal that they made. Mm-hmm. But Ethelyn would send money for, like, clothes and food because she had more money. So she helped her sister out with that. So now they're living in a house, but it's still not, like, a super nice house, you know. It's just pretty low class still. His first year of elementary school was pretty sad. So he got measles.
Oh, gosh.
And then multiple cases of strep. So he had strep over and over and over again, and it led to a lot of painful ear infections.
Yeah.
So he was just constantly in the hospital, or else just in bed all the time. Mm-hmm. And so he started writing as a way to kind of cope with it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's very young. He's only like 5, but he's able to start writing stories.
Dang.
Yeah. So he says that this was the most pain he has ever been in until 1999 when he was hit by a van, which I'll talk about later.
They made fun of that on, I think it was American Dad.
Really?
Yeah, because I think one of them was driving, and then all of a sudden he hit someone, and he did like a backflip, and it was Stephen King, and they're like, "Oh shit, we hit Stephen King," and he's like, "This could be a novel," and he like writes it down.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, but yeah,
Family Guy. It was one of the two.
I could see it on Family Guy for sure.
Yeah. I think it was Family Guy.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, but yeah, that does happen in 1999. Pretty crazy. That is funny that they made fun of that. So, one day, this is a really sad story, just so you guys know, but he doesn't remember this story, but they think that this is a part of, like, the psychological issues that are kind of in his head. One day, he was playing with one of his neighbors, and their neighbor's house was near a railroad line.
Yeah.
So they were just, like, playing on the railroad tracks, kind of going back and forth. And the neighbor got hit by a freight train.
Holy shit.
And died. So Stephen, like, blocked it out of his memory. He doesn't know if he saw it happen. He just knows that he was there because his mom said that he was there.
Yeah.
So, because for, like, a week straight, he was just, like, pale and wouldn't talk to anyone. Like,
oh, he definitely saw it.
Yeah. It hit him really hard. So he was very shooken up, and he didn't speak the whole day. So that happened. And again, he just has no memory. So that happens sometimes when tragic things.
That happens a lot, and especially depending on how young you are, a lot of children will, because you see that in dissociative identity disorder, DID, you see that a lot of their personalities will push back that, like, trauma that they had, and, like, another, like, one of their, I don't know, I can't remember what they call them, but, like, another, like, identity, a part of them will hold that trauma because they don't want the rest of the body to know and to relive that. And kids at a young age, that's how, like, that's why it's so important for kids not to experience trauma like that or abuse, because...
Or to talk it through with someone.
Yeah, because it will affect them going forward, and he's an example. Like, he luckily took his out through creative writing and become so successful, but, like, a lot of
But it did affect him for sure.
Yes, it always does.
Yeah, so that happened. And then he started getting really into, like, horror stories and comics. And Ruth was really nervous about this. Oh, she was like, what's wrong with my son? Why does he like horror so much? And then he even got David into it, so both of her sons were reading horror stories, and she's like, oh my god!
I bet he watched a lot of Twilight Zone.
Yes, he does. How'd you know?
I love that show. That's an old show that I remember that I'm like, total sci-fi.
He loved it. So what he would do is he would read a horror comic, and then he kind of plagiarized, like, not really, but he would take the comic and turn it into a whole story. Oh. So he's taking the original story and changing it into
his idea.
Yeah. So that's what he was doing at first, and his mom was so mad at him for this. She's like, can you just write your own story? Like, what? She was really, like, strict on him. It's kind of funny. But she's like, come on, bro. You can write your own story. You don't need to copy these comics. And so she made him write his own stories. And so whenever he would write a better story than the last, she would pay him $0.25.
What? I mean, at least he's being involved through literature.
And pushing himself to keep going, but Jesus. So, and she didn't have money, you know? It's not like she's just like, take this, peasant. Like, that's a lot. $0.25 a lot.
For then, yeah.
And he wrote a lot of books. So they grew up poor, like I said. They didn't have any indoor plumbing, so they had to even walk to their aunt's house a couple blocks down to take a bath. Dang. That's how intense it was. Yeah. Ruth always used humor as a coping mechanism, and so that's another reason why Stephen King's very, like, humorous. He's always very funny and dark at the same time, because that's how she was. So she would make jokes, like, really dark jokes.
I mean, even his novels and stuff like that have some humor to it, just to lighten.
Right. Gotta have it with it.
Dark.
In 1959, when David, his brother, was 13 years old, he found an old mimeograph machine, and he wrote a local newsletter called Dave's Rag. It sold for 5 cents. Oh, he's doing good. Stephen would even add reviews to TV shows on it. And he would write short stories for it as well. So he was also involved. At age 11, he was already 6 feet tall.
What?
Yeah.
How tall is this?
They showed a picture of, like, the class picture. And all of them are, like, super short. You just see him just, like...
How tall is he?
I'll look it up because I'm curious. Yeah, I didn't know he was tall.
6 feet at 11 years old?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He's 6'4".
So he didn't grow that much more. Like, he just got his growth spurt, like, right after beginning of puberty.
Yeah. I know, it's like 6 feet. Like, okay, I teach 11-year-olds, but only 4 of them are taller than me.
Dang.
Like, anyway.
Well, you're short.
Yeah. Only 4 in my class. The other classes, there's more, but still. He was known as funny and intelligent all the time. So people thought he was so hilarious and just really smart. The family would read every night together. So, like, instead of, you know, watching TV as a family, they would come home, eat dinner, and then they would just sit around the table and read books.
Well, they probably couldn't afford TV.
Right. And so it's kind of cute how they all enjoyed, like, writing, and they all enjoyed reading.
Yeah.
And Stephen was able to eventually pass that on to his own kids as well. So it's just kind of cool how they started this off. And so if you walked into Stephen's room, you would see paperbacks just everywhere. Like, he just had so many books. that was really their escape to everything. He'd make money doing jobs for neighbors so that he could go to the local theater in nearby Lewiston, and he would indulge in some sci-fi and horror movies.
Heck yeah.
So any money he'd make, he'd use it for that.
Aww.
And this is what we were talking about. He would also go to friends' houses and watch scary movies. Or The Twilight Zone on TV.
It's so good.
Yeah, I love The Twilight Zone.
So good.
So cool. So, yeah, he kind of forced his friends to watch horror movies with him.
I mean, that was like all the rage.
Right. Now, his friends were like how normal people are with scary movies, where they're like, I can't look. Or they like jump or scream at least. Whereas they like never affected Steven.
Yeah.
Which I fully relate to. Like when I read that, I was like, oh my God.
Well, you have to think too, because this is what, the 1960s?
Yeah.
Those horror movies are like, granted, for the time, they were scary.
Right.
But like for now, we're just like, really? But that was like all the rage, especially going into the drive-in with a girl or a boy.
Yeah. It's just like, because even movies nowadays that are like, have good graphics.
Yeah.
I don't get scared. I've watched so many scary movies. Like, I don't jump.
Dude,
and so when I read that, I was like, oh my God, I relate to him.
I do. When I saw It Chapter 2.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that movie was so fucking long.
It was.
I really thought it was over, and then there was still another half hour left. I was like, James, he was just like jumping, and I was like, is this ever gonna be over? I was like, this movie's almost 3 hours long.
Yeah.
I think it was about...
It's very long.
Yeah, I think it's like a full 3 hours.
Yeah.
But it was good, but like after that, like Bill Skarsgård?
Scars.
I don't know. Yeah, Bill, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I give him props for that.
It's a good movie.
But like that face he has going on, I'm like, dude, no. He did really good. I gotta give him props for that.
So at my college, they had like free movie nights every month.
Yeah.
Where we would all just go to the movie theater and watch a movie. They'd rent out the movie theater for us.
That's cool.
And that was like my best bonding experience in college, because when I saw, I think it was the first It. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was the first one that they remade.
Yeah.
I went there and there were like 600 people in one theater. Like every seat was full because they had like a balcony area.
Holy shit.
And so like anytime something scary happened, it was just like, ah! Like a big crowd of people.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
Oh yeah.
It was fun.
It is always so much fun.
But yeah, like I love scary movies. I think they're like more funny to me than scary.
I did, honestly, when we saw The Conjuring 3, I was not that scared.
Yeah.
I thought it was, because it was super religious.
Yeah.
And it had its jump scares, but just the film itself wasn't like horror like the first two were. Mm-hmm. Well, even the second one wasn't as bad. The first one, though, with the hand claps,
Yeah, that one's a little weird.
That one's scary. And I don't do Sinister. I can't do it. It is that freaking god demon. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I saw it when I was like 14, I think, when it came out. And I have my brother-in-law, my sister, and my cousin go with me. Yeah. They could get me in because he was already 21.
Right.
And, oh my God, that stupid lawnmower scene where it's just deadly quiet.
Yes.
He's just watching
the video, God.
And then it's just like,
yeah.
And I'm like, I jumped so... I was like hiding behind like my emo bangs. I was like, oh.
You're like, don't feel, don't show. Don't show your feelings.
But man, oh,
that's so funny.
I had nightmares that night, I'm gonna be honest.
The only movie that's ever affected me was The Ring, because I watched it when I was like 5.
I think we watched it together with your sister.
Yes, it was she was having like a birthday party or something.
Yeah.
I remember being behind the couch and like secretly watching it, but then I had nightmares about it for like a week. So that's really the only movie that's like ever affected me, but I was a child, so.
Oh, dude, it's weird.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so that's scary movies. All right. We gotta see the new Scream.
Yes, classic. I watched all 4 of them.
Did you watch the TV show? I love the TV show.
No, I didn't actually.
Oh, so good.
The 4th one sucked. With,
I haven't even seen
Bella Thorne. Courtney Cox, though, the girl who plays Sydney, is in all of them, though.
Bella Thorne was in the show, too. In the beginning, then she gets killed.
Was she? Mm-hmm. She just gets murdered in every single movie she's in.
That's because she sucks at acting. They gotta cut her off sometime. Okay, sorry. No tea, no shade. All right, let's move on. Okay. Oh, jeez. The mic is falling. Okay. But even though he wasn't scared of scary movies, he did have many fears. Oh. He was scared of spiders, being in tight spaces, sewers. Ooh. Yeah. Funerals. I get that one. And the dark. So, what? Yes. It's like the most... Okay. Well, he's a child still.
Okay.
Yeah. So he feared the thin line between good and evil, which follows a lot of his themes in his books.
Yeah.
So he's constantly, like, thinking of, like, where does evil start? Where does good end? That kind of thing. So he was just always scared that, like, people would turn evil suddenly.
Misery.
Yep. And we'll talk about that one later. So, yeah, he began collecting stories about a mass murderer named Charlie Starkweather. And Charlie he went on a killing spree in Nebraska and Wyoming back in, like, the 50s. Yeah. They killed a bunch of people together. So he was really fascinated by this guy and, like, collected different stories about him. Huh. And his mom found the collection and told him he was crazy. She's like, you're a psycho. And so, yeah, that happened.
He was the OG, like, true crime obsessor.
Exactly. Like, if he was... I mean, he's still alive. Sorry. I said if he was alive now, he is. I'm trying to think of how to word this. If he, like, grew up during our time, this would have been fine. Like, it would have been normal.
Yeah.
But it was just like, what are you doing getting interested in this before the 70s? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. Anyway, so then before that. A lot of times he dealt with his fears by writing stories about them. That's good. So, sewer.
It's a good coping.
Yeah. That's what he did a lot of time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in 1960, this is when he found his dad's writing. So, he looked into this box and found a bunch of books, and then underneath the books was a lot of his dad's writing. He wrote a lot of stories, and he also had a collection of rejection letters. Aww. Yeah, so he really tried to get out there. But then, after he talked to his mom about this, she just said he never had the persistence. Like, he would give up and just be like, all right, I'm done with this. And so she said that's why our marriage didn't work out. Oh. Yeah. So that just gives you a little insight on his dad. So this really inspired him to not only write, but to not give up.
That's honestly a good motto to live by.
Yes, exactly. So Stephen decided that after finding this box and finding those rejection slips, he really wanted to make a name for himself. So he began submitting his own stories to magazines and started collecting his own rejection slips. So he had his own collection. He was very determined, unlike his father.
Yeah.
In 1963, he was suspended from his high school for producing a newspaper parody about, like, all of the kids who go to the high school. He called it The Village Vomit.
I love that.
It's kind of like the Burn Book, where, like, he just roasts them all, gives them nicknames.
Dude, that's hilarious.
Just imagine the principal being like, all right, so I read The Village Vomit. You can't do that, bud.
Be like, so... Why did you write this about me?
Yeah. Do you really think my hair is greasy? So he taught himself guitar and joined a band during this time as well. He's a singer. I learned this yesterday when I was researching. He said he knows how to play guitar.
What?
This was not the first band that he has, or not the last band that he has.
What?
Joins a band. So he's in a band for fun. And then he decides to get a job since he's in high school now, so he can work. So he gets a part-time job of digging graves.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, that's not good. It was really good money, so he did it.
I mean, yeah, because no one wants to do that job, so they're going to pay you more to do it.
Mm-hmm. So he saw a lot of creepy things while he was there. He even wrote a short story called I Was a Teenage Grave Robber. And this story is about an orphan boy who digs up bodies for an evil scientist. Yeah. And it was accepted and published in 1965. So that was his first published short story.
I wonder if that inspired, like, Pet Sematary was through that.
There's another story that happens that inspires Pet Sematary. Oh. Yeah. He did not make any money from this. So he was able to get it published, but didn't make anything from it.
You know what? It gets your word out.
Right. It's kind of what he's, doing right now. Mm-hmm. In 1966, they went on a senior trip to Los Angeles and New York City.
What?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, rude. We didn't even have a senior trip.
That's because our school couldn't afford it.
Did we go to, like, Skate City? Like, it was something so stupid. Like, it was
that was in middle school. No, that was, I think we just, no, that was for senior ditch day. Some people went to the zoo. I believe we went to the Penny Arcade.
I don't even remember senior skate day.
No, because our school couldn't afford a senior trip, but, like, in middle school, we went both to the zoo and Skate City.
That's why I was thinking that. Okay.
8th grade, it was at one of the sport clubs or whatever, like, for swimming.
Yes.
I didn't go to that.
I didn't either. I was kind of like, screw you guys, bye.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they got a really fancy senior trip here.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's, like, 17, hanging out with friends, and he gets very drunk.
Yes.
Obviously, the teachers and everyone got mad at him, but then he did it again the next day because he enjoyed the way that he felt.
Oh,
this led to a 20-year addiction to alcohol. So the weird thing about him, and I think a lot of alcoholics might go through this, he never wanted to drink socially. So if people were just hanging out, he never just wanted to drink, like, one beer. To him, the only purpose to drinking was to get trashed.
Oh.
So he couldn't ever just drink one beer. He would just go crazy.
Keep
with
going.
It. Yeah. So that is why the addiction hit him so hard.
Mm-hmm.
He always wanted to be as plastered as possible. Those were his own words.
Wow.
Yeah. But he was able to really write through his addiction. So even when he was drunk, he would write stories.
Dang.
Yeah. After graduating, he wanted to join the military, but his mom told him to go to college. Once again, Ruth is like, no, you will do this instead. She's very, like, in his face.
Yeah.
So he gathered scholarships and loans, and he worked to put himself through school. He was a very big hippie, so in the 70s, you know.
Of course.
He was very, very vocal about how he felt, and so he always had something to say about everything. So he was a part of this group that went against the Vietnam War.
Which is funny because he wanted to join the military.
Right. I think he had, like, I think it was a phase.
Honestly, it could be the alcohol, too.
Yeah. Maybe just to, like, better off his life or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, now he's against the war.
Go figure.
And he wrote about all of his views. So he published a newspaper, I think it was for months, where he would just tell people how he felt about this. And they took part in a lot of protests. He completed 5 novels by the time he was a junior in college.
Okay.
Yeah. And he professionally published his short story called The Glass Floor. His mom sent him money in college, which meant that she'd have to go without food because she didn't have money still. Mm-hmm. So whenever she would send him money, she would just know that she's basically going to have to starve. Like, in June 1969, I'm not in the 70s yet. Oops. Okay. 1969.
The 60s and 70s.
Right.
The late 60s were a hippie movement. Too. Yes. That was hippies.
That's where it started. And in June 1969, he had a part-time job at the university library. This is where he met the love of his life, Tabitha Spruce. She was a history major and an aspiring poet.
Hey.
Yeah, the two fell in love through writing. That's just so cute. They write, like, each other letters, and love that.
I mean, they couldn't text each other.
Right. He graduated in 1970 with a bachelor's degree in English, and he's dating Tabitha at the time. They quickly get married, and she gets pregnant pretty much right away. So right after their graduation, Naomi is pregnant, or Tabitha, oh my gosh, sorry, I freaked out. Right after their graduation, Tabitha gets pregnant, and they have their daughter, Naomi, who was born months later. They moved into a trailer. It was just the 3 of them. And at this time, King just graduated from high school, so he's college. I call him, sorry guys. He just graduated from college, and so he's trying to think of what he wants to do next. So he's considering teaching English, but he could not find a job.
Dude, imagine him teaching English and then writing his books and someone being like, he taught me English!
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
So what he ended up doing instead is he pumped gas and he worked at a laundromat. Tabitha worked nights at Dunkin' Donuts.
Huh.
Yeah. So they didn't really see each other a lot.
Yeah.
He was very depressed by how he wasn't able to make money for the family. Mm-hmm. There was obviously that pressure, especially as a male, but especially as like a dad, you know, having a child and just having to have them both work 24/7. So he decided to start writing on their typewriter every night. And his goal was just to get them out of poverty, like just to be able to afford living, basically, not to get super rich, but just to afford life. Mm-hmm. And so he would write. And the cool thing about Tabitha is she fully supported him. Oh. A lot of people, I feel like, would be like, don't waste your time on that.
Yeah.
But to him, he saw that this would eventually lead them to a better life.
I think her also being an inspiring poet.
She understands, yeah. I didn't think of that. That's true. So he ended up actually quitting one of his jobs so he could really focus on writing and would just write like crazy. So with writing and everything, he finally found a job teaching English at an academy, and he's now making more money, which is good. So he had a better job, but now he had less time to write because he's working those long hours, coming home and grading, and then he would just go hide in their laundry room and just use that typewriter till he went to bed, basically. So in 1972, they had a second child named Joseph, and he actually ends up being an author as well. So he ends up writing in his future.
Oh, good for him.
So while they're having Joseph, this was a time where King was publishing stories in magazines. So really trying to get his name out and just focusing on those really short stories. Mm-hmm. They still couldn't afford their life. They had a lot of emergencies, which usually happens when you have two young kids. Yeah. And like you just bought a new house. So they had emergency after emergency and just really couldn't afford much. So stress really led to King drinking more, as well as picking up things like smoking. He smoked cigarettes like crazy, and gambling. He got addicted to gambling. Yeah. So he got to a point where he couldn't even afford books anymore. Mm-hmm. So eventually a publishing company contacted him because he liked his stories. He wouldn't publish them, but said that he wouldn't forget him. So they basically were just like, we have your name. We're not going to publish this one, but just know we're keeping an eye out for your stories. So this is when Stephen started working on a little story called Carrie.
Was that his first big one?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he wanted to send it to a men's magazine. So Carrie actually started as a very short story. It was the same plot of, the religious mom and the daughter going through the first period. Yeah. But it was a very short story. So he read it and then he let Tabitha read it. And they basically came to the conclusion that there's so much in the story that as a short story, it just doesn't work very well.
And it's very good that he expanded it.
Yeah. So he ended up throwing it in the trash, and Tabitha didn't know he threw it away. So she came into his office and found it in the trash and was like, "Excuse me, why did you throw this away? This is art. Like, you could really make something out of this." And so she gave it back to him and told him to just publish a short story, see how it does. And so...
What a good wife.
I know, right? So they actually ended up sending that story to Bill, he was the one who's in charge of the publishing company. Bill asked him to edit parts of it, so he did. So it's still just that short story, but he was able to make edits and get it published. With his edits, he created the whole story, Carrie, and gave it back to them and said, "Hey, I wrote an actual novel. Here you go." And so that's what he submitted. Now, because they were so poor, they couldn't afford their phone bill. And so their phone went out. And so one day while he's at school, there's an announcement that tells him to come to the office and that his wife has a message for him. And so he's thinking either something's wrong with the kids or my book got published. So he's like, I don't know what's going to happen. So he goes to the office and there's a telegram from Bill. There's a message from Tabitha that she received a telegram from Bill that said that he saw a future in Carrie and wanted to publish it for $2,500. Oh! Yeah. I know. And this was like a fortune to him.
Yeah.
And so in April 1974, he released Carrie, and they were able to move to a bigger area and had like a nicer house.
Dude, Carrie though too, like they've made so many different adaptations of it. Oh, yeah. It's the classic, the pig's blood.
Mm-hmm.
Boy.
Yeah. So after Carrie was published, he continued to write, and he also continued to drink. Classic. Mm-hmm. Another publishing company actually contacted the one that published Carrie and was like, hey, we can buy it for more money. And so they actually ended up buying Carrie for $400,000.
What?
Yes, and Stephen got $200,000. He got half.
So much, especially in the 70s.
Right.
Good for him.
I know. So he was able to quit his job.
Yay!
And write full time.
Yay!
I know, that's what he's been wanting his whole life.
Every writer's dream.
I know! Yeah.
That's my dream.
Yeah. This really sad part of this story, though, is that we know his mom's very poor.
Yeah.
He was always like, if I make a lot of money, I'm going to give it to my mom. Mm-hmm. She actually ended up passing away the year before Carrie was published.
Aww.
I know! She had uterine cancer.
And you know he would have done it too.
I know.
He would have been like, hey, move in with us,
right.
retire, like you could do whatever. That's so sad.
And she never got to see him publish this big book. I was like...
I bet he went to her grave and was like, Mom,
I did it. Yeah, Carrie. Oh.
It's a horror book, but
I wrote a beautiful story. Oh, yeah. So she never really got to see his success, which is really sad because it was literally a year away from it all happening.
I mean, at least his brother got to experience it with him.
Definitely. Money never changed him, which people really respected because it didn't matter how much money he was making. And this is still how he is today.
Well, that's why he looks like a grandpa.
Right. He drives really old cars. He wears like flannel shirts, like baggy pants.
Yeah.
Like he's just not materialistic, and people really admired that about him. I feel like that's how a lot of big authors are, though.
I feel like when you are so poor in a situation like that, you always have like that frugality in the back of your mind because you're like, right, I don't know if I'm ever gonna lose this. Yeah. Especially with his addictions.
Yeah.
Like he probably with gambling, losing a lot of money, and it's just like I never know when I'm gonna lose it. That's pretty much in the back of your mind.
Yeah, definitely. So with this book being big, he definitely had that fear that he would be a one-book wonder. And so that was another part of it. He's like, people are going to forget about me. This is the only book that's really going to make it big. But he just kept writing. So he would write about 1,500 words a day. He took ideas from his own life. So he wrote the story Salem's Lot. That was his next big one. They published it for $500,000. And Stephen got half of it again.
I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Hold on.
Ruby wants to drink some.
You want a little bit of a seltzer? Strawberry lemonade. Or pink lemonade.
It's pretty good.
It smells super good.
I'm excited to try the tropical punch. How's the berry one? Was it good?
Yeah, it had a little bit more of a seltzer taste. That one's good.
Yeah.
It's like sweeter.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. So he published his Salem Lot, and then this is when Columbia Pictures offered the film of Carrie. So they're like, hey, we want to make a movie.
Yeah.
And so he's like, all right, whatever. Well, that's fine. In 1974, the Kings moved to Boulder, Colorado. You know where I'm going with this?
Yes, I do!
Yes. He had a very hard time writing. And so he thought that this would be a nice private area that he'd be able to really get a lot of inspiration from the nature. And so they stayed in the Stanley Hotel. And this is just him and his wife. And no one else was there when he stayed. So
because it was during the winter season.
Yeah. So he really let his imagination just go crazy.
I love that.
So he sat out in the hallway with his notebook, or I don't know what he was doing at the time, but he was just basically looking at the hallway and thinking of ideas. And so there'd be like a hose, and he would imagine that's like a snake. And then he would imagine that he's hearing different sounds. And so he basically created this whole experience there. and imagine this paranormal sensation.
Dude, that movie is all over the place.
Yes. And so he was walking down the hall. He imagined this story about a boy with paranormal powers and his alcoholic dad that wanted to kill him. Stephen was an alcoholic again. He was very drunk while he was staying here. So that also inspired it. Mm-hmm. He was under a lot of stress during this time. And he really was trying to put his all into writing. And so he created The Shining with all of his stress. Like, that's why it's, like, so crazy.
It really is. Like, just I haven't read the novel, but just the movie, I'm like...
Yeah.
This movie's all over the place, because I finally sat down and watched it,
it's like, crazy.
A couple of years ago, and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Like,
the
twins?
I kept asking that in the entire movie. I was like, what is going on?
I love the meme of, like, whatever the actor's name is. Not Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
Did I get an actor's name right for once?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay. How exciting. All right. So, yeah, a lot of the feelings that are in The Shining and a lot of the stories are actually how he was feeling. Which is really dark. So, he finished The Shining in Colorado and returned to Maine in 1975. He's like, all right, we're good. We can go back. And so, Salem's Lot sold very well. It was still selling. Mm-hmm. And so was Carrie, who was making a lot of money. In 1976, the film of Carrie was finally released, and it was a box office hit.
Oh, yeah.
This put King's name on the map. So anyone who doesn't read books started learning his name, which was huge, because at this time it was only, like, people who enjoyed reading knew who he was, but now everybody knew who he was.
Oh, yeah, because more people are... it's sad to say, but more people are going to watch movies.
Definitely, yeah. In 1977, The Shining was published. And another bestseller. So the first 3 books that he published were all bestsellers, which is very rare to happen.
Well, I think he has a good process, even though it's really, it's a bad process when it comes to his mental health.
Yeah.
But, like, it's his process.
Yes, definitely. In 1978, he wrote The Stand, which apparently, I don't know what this one is, but apparently his, like, big fans think that this is his #1 masterpiece.
Really?
Like, they'd be happy if he never wrote again after this, they'd be okay, because that's how good this book was. It's an apocalyptic tale of a flu wiping out humanity. I know, I was like,
dude, shit. I'm surprised they haven't made a movie yet.
Right? And this book was so big, it weighs 12 pounds.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. They tried to make him cut some stuff out, and he's like, nope. Screw that.
How many pages is that?
I don't know. A lot.
That has to be like almost 1,000 pages.
Yeah. So yeah, but everyone loved that book.
How the fuck do you write a book that long?
I don't know.
Good lord.
I would never be able to read that book. That's all I know.
Dude.
I can't make it through that long of a book. I get bored.
That's why I haven't tried to read the Harry Potter series.
Oh god, no. Sorry, Harry Potter fans. Just not gonna happen. All right. So his publishing company was treating him very poorly and just was like, hey, you're making money, but they didn't really recognize him as a human. Mm-hmm. So this kind of made him mad. But his paperback publisher agreed to give him $2.5 million in advance for his next 3 books.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So he wrote The Dead Zone, Firestarter, and Cujo, and got $2.5 million.
I don't think I'm familiar with a lot of his novels.
No, I've heard of Cujo, but I haven't heard of the other 2. So he's written a lot of books, like I said.
Yeah.
So I didn't really put a description of all of them, but it would be interesting to hear more about the rest of them. The Kings could now afford to live anywhere, obviously.
Hell yeah.
So they moved to England after welcoming their 3rd child.
What?
And their 3rd kid's name was Owen. Okay, so in 1978, they're like, all right, England's cool. He started writing books there, but then they're like, let's go back to Maine. They always go back to Maine.
I think he just needs to stay there. That's like
Maine
his
is
heart.
where his heart, his heart is. And this is truly, he felt like he could live a normal life in Maine. Yeah. And I think that's why he wanted to go back, because anywhere else he'd be treated differently.
Yeah.
But he knew small town Maine, people knew who he was, but he could have his own privacy, which was really important to him.
And have a nice ass house, too.
Right, exactly. Owen, his 3rd kid, ran out into the street and almost got hit by a car. Oh, no, it was not just a car. It was a huge semi-truck. And so King actually saw this happening and reached out and saved him.
I know where this is going.
Yes, you do. This inspired Pet Sematary.
Because in Pet Sematary, the kid actually dies.
Yep. So, yeah, if you've never read or seen the movie for Pet Sematary, this is actually, I read this book. It was a good one. Yeah. It's a story of a father finding a way to bring his dead son back. So that was kind of, he used the perspective of, like, if he would have died, what would I have done?
So we would have done a demon ritual?
I mean, you would have passed him. He's drunk all the time. The Coke is coming soon.
The Coke?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Drugs.
Oh. It was like Coca-Cola? I forgot cocaine is also Coke. Dude, okay. He was going crazy.
Yeah. Now, with Pet Sematary, he kept it in a drawer for 3 years, thinking nobody would read it. So basically, him and Tabitha talked about it, and they were like, this is too dark. This is too emotional for us. Nobody's going to want to read this story. And so he kept it in a drawer and then just changed his focus. So he started writing different books. He wrote a story called Dead Zone. And fans became very demanding and wanted to know more about him. They were just, like, so curious. Like, they never saw interviews with him. They never saw him walking around because he really does treasure his privacy.
Well,
still alive.
If he's writing 1,000-page books, he's not going to be outside.
Exactly. You think he's just walking around? So, in 1979, we had the film version of The Shining, and this pissed him off because the director actually changed the story.
I heard about that.
Yeah. So, King decided from that day on, he wanted a say in the movies. He's like, if you're going to use my stories as a movie, then I better help with this.
Yeah.
And he did not want anything to do with Hollywood. Just pissed him off. So he tried to use, like, different companies that were smaller. In 1980, they bought a mansion. Love that for him. And his addiction escalated. So he got addicted to Coke. Not Coca-Cola, cocaine.
It's very common.
And he knew it was a problem. Yeah. Like, it's not like he was just like, oh, this is great. He knew it was a problem. But, yeah, I'm still writing books. So from 1980 to 1984, he published 14 novels.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, if he was on Coke, like, he was probably awake every day.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He acted in a show. It's a creep show with his son. And it was about one of his short stories that he turned into a film.
Oh.
And they said he's not a good actor. And he was like, yeah, that's the only time I ever tried. Just did not work out for him. Nobody watched it. Everyone was just like, what is happening? In 1985, King helped direct his first, like, movie that was made from his stories. And it was Maximum Overdrive. This one did not make it far.
Yeah.
People were not interested in. And then he wrote It was the next one he wrote. Yeah. Which at first it was not very big. It was just one of his novels. It didn't become big till the movie came out, which is interesting.
Okay, the miniseries?
Yeah. So he was publishing it, but nobody really, like, gave that much attention to it.
It's split into 2 parts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that we're saying, like, it's split, and it's called It.
Yeah.
It's just funny.
Because that's a big book.
Yeah. Some schools banned his books. Because we had English teachers just reading his stories, or, like, they were reading, like, The Shining in class. And then eventually they were like, we should probably not be reading these. And so a lot of his books got banned.
Makes sense.
And he even wrote this book called Rage. Have you heard of Rage? It's it's his darkest book. It's basically about a student who traps all of the other kids in a room and, like, threatens to kill them.
Holy shit.
And so a lot of school shootings were inspired by this book. So I don't believe you can buy it anymore.
It's on the ban list.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, he came out and was like, yeah, that was a little too crazy. I'm sorry. Like, so he regretted publishing it. He says if he had any regret in his life, it was publishing Rage.
The unfortunate thing is that, like, kids are still making those actions. They make those actions themselves. And
exactly.
Kids are dark enough to do what his story was. Yeah. What he told.
Yeah, definitely. But some of them did say that, like, oh, I got these ideas from this book. So
yeah, and it's just like, dude, really?
It's like how we say, like, video games makes people violent. It's kind of the same thing. But yeah, he just was kind of like, all right, let's pull this from publishing. So we're not going to do this book anymore.
I bet that book is worth
a lot. Oh, yeah.
If you have an edition.
So he wrote a book. I didn't write the original title, but it inspired the movie Stand By Me. And this was based on a true story of his childhood. This one isn't as dark.
He wrote that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And he said that it was really hard for him to watch because it was based on his life.
Yeah, because they found, I think it was a group of boys going along the train tracks and they find that dead body.
Yeah, and so it had to do with that story.
Yeah.
In 1986, he wrote Misery, my favorite.
I love that movie.
I love it so much.
Kathy Bates is fantastic.
Queen.
Yes.
And this is about, if you guys haven't watched the movie, you'll need to. It's hilarious. And just, like, so crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I want to watch it now.
It just escalates real quick.
It does escalate. It's about an author who gets captured by his number one fan, and she tries to force him into writing the book the way that she wants it.
Love it.
Now, the Kathy Bates character, the one that captures him, actually represents drugs. So when he was writing the story, it's like drugs trying to take over his life and rewrite the stories for him. I know, I thought that was so crazy. I was like, okay.
This guy, he's deep. How his brain works, just...
I know, I'm just curious, like, what goes on in there?
Blows me away.
And so Misery was on the bestseller list in 1987.
Rightfully so.
Yes. I did read the book for that one as well. It's good. And at this point, he starts smoking 2 packs a day. That's how bad it's getting.
You know what? That's common in that.
Right. But the bigger thing is that he's drinking 3 to 4 6-packs a day.
Jesus Christ.
He was even chugging NyQuil and Listerine.
How is this dude not dead?
I don't know. So eventually his family was like, let's stage an intervention.
Good.
And so his wife basically said, you need to get straight or you're going to leave. And his kids are older at this point, so they're like, yeah. Yeah, Dad, you're going to leave. And so he's like, okay, this hit me hard because for one, if I leave, I can still write, but word's going to get out that it was because of addiction.
I think too.
And my life's going to go downhill.
I think it's also, that's exactly what my dad did.
Yeah. Yep, that too. Didn't even think of that, but that's true. And then on the other side, it was like, I'm going to lose my family. So he obviously made the better choice and decided to get his life back on track.
Did he go to rehab?
I don't know for sure, but I know that just having that intervention really helped him realize like how bad it was getting. And once he realized it was affecting them, I think he just cared too much about being a husband and a father that he was just like, it's not worth it.
People, if you see one of your family members having problems,
check in with them. Plan that intervention. Okay, anyway. So now he's writing sober.
Yay!
And in 1990, the Misery film becomes a hit. Woo! Kathy Bates won an Emmy for this.
Hell yeah!
Sorry.
Oh my god.
Okay. That sounded like 5 people burping at once. I kept a burp in one of our episodes. I don't remember which one it is. But like halfway through, I'm just like, and I was like, should I crop it? No. Who remembers that? Good times. All right. Sorry. Okay, so he's still living in Maine because he can't leave his town. He loves it so much. And he's trying to think of ways that he can use his money to give back to the community. So one thing he did is he made a little baseball field in his small town. Like, just created this entire baseball field. They ended up nicknaming it something dark. I forget what it is. It was like Field of Blood or something like that. Because it was after him. But that's not the name he gave it. And then he even expanded the local library.
See, that makes sense, yeah.
Know. And he formed a band and toured to raise money for literacy. So So he's in another band. And from 1985 to 1999, he's sober.
Yay!
And he published 26 more books.
Shit.
Yeah. started making a list, and I was like, this is going to take too long, so I stopped. During this time as well, they had a stalker come into their mansion and tried to kill them.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And so he was just like, we gotta move again. Okay, cool. So he's writing other types of stories like Shawshank Redemption.
He wrote that?
Yeah.
What the
I know, it's crazy. And so he's kind of trying other genres of writing. In the late 1990s, there was a documentary. That word didn't sound right when I said it. A documentary producer tracked their dad down. So he wanted to know more information of, like, what happened to Stephen's dad.
Oh.
They learned that this guy is living in Pennsylvania with his new family. Yeah.
Oh, that's the tea.
Until November 1980 when he died.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. He was living with his new Brazilian wife.
Wow.
Had, 5 kids.
Damn.
Yeah.
So he had more siblings.
Yeah, and they asked Stephen if he wanted to, reach out to those, step brothers and sisters, and he was just like, no. At this point, we have our own lives. I don't want to get involved. Because they don't think that his new wife ever learned about them.
Oh.
Yeah. So he was just kind of like, we're not even going to go
touch
there.
That.
Yeah. So I wonder if they, ever found out or if they knew. I'm not sure.
Dude.
I know. And the worst thing, he was never divorced from Ruth. They never got an official divorce.
Oh.
Yeah. So. Yep. Okay, so one day, he's taking a walk, reading a book as he's walking, and gets hit by a van. When I read that at first, I thought it meant, he was in a car and got hit by a van. Nah.
He was just walking.
He was walking, reading a book as he was walking.
What? How? Why?
So the van, saw him and tried to swerve out of the way, but then, hit a curb and just ran right into him. It was bad. So it almost killed him. He broke his legs, lungs, and fractured his hip.
Oh my god.
Yeah. He was hospitalized for weeks. And with this hospitalization, he lost over 100 pounds.
Holy shit.
He got addicted to his pain meds.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. And Brian Smith was the person who was driving the van. This is very ironic. He actually never went to jail once they caught him. But he overdosed, the next year.
Was it a hit and run?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I don't know I'm pretty sure it was. But they, he went to court and everything. But he just died very soon after.
Yeah.
From an overdose. So, yeah. So that was happening. And then he gets out of the hospital. They decide to move to Florida as a way to just kind of, they're getting older.
Yeah.
They want to settle down there. So they rented and eventually bought a house there. And in 1999, he returned to writing a book titled Dreamcatcher and a story about his own life called On Writing. And the first part of this book talks about his life, his childhood. And then the second half is advice for writers, which I think is really cool. Yeah. And so he used his accident to inspire several stories. So this is with Family Guy or whatever we were talking about. I'm going to go write stories. He wrote The Secret Window, The Mist, and 1408. And those all became movies as well.
Yeah, I've heard of The Mist.
The Mist. Have you watched the movie? It's crazy.
I think it was on Netflix.
Yeah, I think it was. It's wild.
Well, that's the one where if it touches them, it's acidic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they all have to live in bunkers.
Yep. That's crazy.
Yeah.
In 2008, he created Duma Key. It was his first suspense novel based on Florida. In 2009, he created Under the Dome, and this was an ecological suspense story. And I just wrote down what he's done in the last 10 years, just because so I got all of that information from a documentary.
For us, still writing?
Well, no.
Okay.
It's more so changing his books to movies and directing.
I mean, he has so many of them.
Right. So, here's some of the movies in the last 10 years that have come out. In the Tall Grass, it was a short story turned into a movie. 1922, it was based on one of his novellas. Castle Rock, I think it was just a show or an episode of a show. It Chapter 2, and then obviously It, the remake version. The Outsider, Mr. Mercedes, 11/23/63, which just talked about the JFK conspiracies. Gerald's Game, and Dr. Sleep.
Oh, yeah, because Dr. Sleep is like a continuation of Shining.
Yeah. So, that's pretty much it. Now he's just kind of living his best life. He's in his 70s. I don't know for sure. I'm guessing he's in Maine. If I had to guess, I'd be like, he's definitely living it up in Maine. But yeah, he's just kind of taken the rest of his life to just chill. He's made money. He's written a lot.
Written so much.
It's one of those things where it's like, all right, bud, good job. You're done.
And they keep making remakes of his classics, too.
And he's just been involved in all of the directing.
Which is so good because I think every author should be. If you are creating their film, the author should be on there because they're going to have their own ideas of like, this is what this character should be or what this situation, what I was thinking in that moment that I didn't put in the book, but what could also happen to like what I think. Because it's the author who created this. Like, I get it that like the writers of like the script and everything do like their own thing and then the director, but it's like you have to think originally that you're making an adaptation of a book that has already been created. The fans want what the book is.
Oh, for sure. You don't want something different.
Fuck about what the other writers.
Right.
Which is really sad, but it's just like you're making an adaptation of a book.
Right.
People want the book in a visual setting. They don't want
a new
it's
story.
Really sad, but they don't want the freaking other writer's interpretation. Because that's not their work.
Imagine like how like offended you'd feel after that. Like,
well, when they came out with The Giver.
Yeah.
Granted, it's a great movie. But for me, I love the novel. I was very disappointed. For one, because they made Jonas older. But I think they did that.
Book,
They did that because they thought that like teenagers would relate more to it. And I'm like, but then you just ruined because this kid was like 12 years old. He was going into maturity. And he had to make these decisions as a young kid. And you completely take that by making him like 17 years old. So that was what like upset me about that adaptation. And of course, people with Harry Potter, they're like...
Twilight. I was so mad about some of the things they did in Twilight.
Well, yeah, because like with ginormous books like that, turning them into film adaptations and not TV shows, you're going to have to cut out a lot.
Yes.
So you have to, if it's a thick book, expect it to be not the same as the book. They're going to have to cut stuff out because that's just how it is. And I was talking to my coworkers about like why they didn't turn like Harry Potter or Twilight into a TV series because then you can just add on to it. And my coworker made a good point that with TV series for like a certain like book series is that people will lose interest over time instead of with movies that come out once a year.
And it's not going to hit all audiences, whereas like with movies, it's like, oh, what is this new movie coming out?
Exactly. And that's why a lot of them do that. So it's just, if you're going into like another remake of a large book, you have to expect that not everything is going to be in there. But they should make the effort to stay as true as they can to the film.
Like they made the book. Twilight fans, you'll know this. They made Bella completely different in the movie. Like she was very like happy and upbeat in the books. Yeah. And it was like, that's why we're all like, what is Kristen Stewart doing? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of them just didn't connect with the characters whatsoever. But it's a vampire love story book. I just thought that the whole romance between all of them was very toxic.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So that's why, like, I love the movies for the nostalgia part, but when it comes down to, like, the actual, like, this is very toxic.
Oh, yes.
But the one thing that I appreciate about Stephen King is just, like, his stories just captivate you. And I feel like even the movies captivate you. And I think him having a role in the newer movies to have, like, this is how we should do it.
Right.
Just having a part of it.
And I think
really helps.
like, I've heard people say, because I've always really enjoyed him, and I've enjoyed his movies and his books. And I don't read books, but I've read a few of his books because I enjoy him. But, like, people are always like, he's crazy. Like, I just feel like they make quick judgments where, like, it's like, there's a reason why he writes what he writes.
Exactly.
It's not just that he's, like, obviously he went through a lot of addiction.
Yeah. And
his brain may not have always been how it's supposed to be, but, like, he writes for a reason.
Exactly.
And so just to be like, oh, he's crazy. Like, you're just being closed-minded to, like, what the stories are about.
And a lot of them, too, is because they don't like horror.
Yeah.
Because it is a very specific taste of literature. But it just for how many he has done, and just to have enough ideas.
I know.
To create that many novels just blows my mind.
And your first 3 books are bestsellers.
Exactly.
What? The first book you ever published is Carrie?
Yeah.
Are you joking?
That is like a cult classic. He has so many cult classics. You know his name. Even if you haven't read the books or even seen all of the movies, you know Stephen King.
Yeah.
His name is iconic.
Right.
And it's going to, honestly, he is the king of horror. Like,
oh yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe, you can fight me on it.
I love him, but yeah.
But just Stephen King has produced so much more because Edgar Allan Poe's life was cut short.
Exactly, yeah.
So that really, I bet he would have written so much more if he didn't die.
Mm-hmm.
But Stephen King he came out swinging.
Definitely.
And he has just made an impact in the horror community and just in the thriller community, because not all of his novels are horror. And I feel like people forget about that.
Yeah.
They're thrillers, they're suspenseful.
And there's humor in them. And there's a lot of characters, like, that represent everything. So, yeah, anyway. What'd you learn? We never do that, so I'm trying to bring you back.
I have learned not to give up when writing, because I would love to write my book. I need to rewrite it because there's so many more ideas that I have for it. But it's just like hearing how he like never gave up. It takes time.
Oh yeah.
And for him making that time, it kind of inspires me.
Yeah.
Because he was busy all the time, but like he still managed.
He didn't have any means to get big or anything. Yeah. But he just kept going.
Yeah, even carrying those rejection letters, he's like, it is what it is.
Yeah, I love that he kept those.
Yes. And I think that's kind of an achievement to be like, I've sent out this many.
Yeah.
I've been rejected this many
times.
They're
reading it.
Yeah, they're reading it. And that's all you can ask for when you're starting out. Even like when he got...
She can't decide what she's going to do next.
when he got published and didn't get paid, like, that's still putting your name out there.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you can do.
I learned to not read a book while walking.
What? Oh, yeah.
You might get hit by a van.
Mm-hmm. That blows my mind. I can't believe we could have lost a great one.
I know. But yeah, don't give up, guys. Don't give up.
Just keep pushing. It doesn't even have to be for writing. Like, just painting, whatever your hobby
into.
Is. Yeah.
We're so inspirational.
Oh,
look at us.
Thank you for hanging on with us today.
Yes, it was a great one.
This one's pretty long.
I want you all to know that I did draw a red balloon with his name. So, I know you guys can't see it, but I did.
That red balloon.
I even drew, what's the kid's name? Not Charlie. Billy? No.
Mikey?
Mike. Oh, I just forgot his name. I drew the little kid's raincoat.
I can't remember.
I don't know. Anyway.
I kicked myself.
Did you already ask where you could find us?
Oh, where can you find us?
Okay, I wasn't sure. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Historia the Podcast. You can send us an email at historiathepodcast@gmail.com.
Woo-hoo.
We do have a couple new social medias coming soon. Dun, dun, dun. Stay tuned. Please send us your requests, guys, because I love, like, seeing that people have requests.
Yeah.
Even if it's something you think, like, they'll never talk about that, or, like, that's lame. Like, no! We're always interested in learning new things. So send it our way.
I like learning new things.
Yes.
It adds to my book collection.
All right.
We will catch you next week for another good author.
Yes, we will. Mm-hmm. All right. Stay warm, stay safe, and make history.
See you next week.
Goodbye.